Music for All is proud to sponsor Bandstand. At Music for All, we're about providing positively life-changing experiences. Join us with your marching band at Bands of America or with your concert ensemble at the Music for All National Festival. Students can audition for our honor ensembles or attend camp at the Music for All Summer Symposium, featuring the Sweetwater Director Academy, an amazing week of professional development for directors led by Dr. Nola Jones. Learn more at musicforall.org.
Romeo Music is the leader in audio, video, music, and lighting technology for educators. With a combined nearly 200 years of experience, Romeo Music's subject matter experts understand the struggles that face teachers in today's music classrooms. With a laser focus on educational technology, Romeo Music provides a turnkey solution, everything from audio cables to on-site training. To learn more, visit www.romeomusic.net.
Hello, and welcome to Bandstand, the official podcast of the Tennessee Bandmasters Association. I'm your host, David Aydelott, and I hope you'll join us on a journey through the past, present, and future of bands in Tennessee. We'll delve into the rich history of Tennessee bands, uncovering the hidden gems and legendary figures who shaped the state's band landscape. We'll survey the present, where you'll meet the movers and shakers of today, gaining insights from their expertise and experiences. And we'll gaze towards the future, exploring the exciting possibilities that await Tennessee's school bands. Hello everyone, David Aydelott here. Sorry about the Bandstand hiatus. Bandtober hit me hard too, and I'm just a retired guy. But now that it's November, we're back with an episode dedicated to our 3 Governor's Cup winning bands. Peabody High from Division I, that's schools with enrollments of less than 500 students. Elizabethton High School, the Betsy Band, from Division II, that's schools with enrollments between 500 and 1,000 students. And the Franklin Band received the Tennessee Governor's Cup at the MTSU Contest of Champions. Joining us from Peabody will be James Young, Emma Lang, and Andrew Burris. From the Betsy Band, Jonathan Valentine and Phil Ledford. And from Franklin, Michael Holland and Nick Blue. For our Division I Governor's Cup winner, we have the team from Peabody High School. Peabody is in Trenton, Tennessee, over in Gibson County in West Tennessee. We have James Young, Emma Lang, and Andrew Burris with us. So, hello, Team Peabody. How are you?
Good. Glad to be
We
here.
out here. Yeah, we out here.
We out here.
State champions, Division I state champions.
And well earned. I was actually on the panel this past Saturday for that show and just enjoyed your program very much. I saw you on the field and in prelims, field music, and then I was on a music effect for finals. And I think you were my number 1 group. So congratulations. You earned it very much.
Appreciate
you.
So tell us a little bit about your community and your school for the folks that aren't local to Gibson County that just need to know about your school in Trenton and that sort of thing.
So we're a small school in Gibson County. Our enrollment here is about 430 students. And we're actually a special school district here. We have 70 members in the high school band.
That's a great percentage for a 400 kid high school.
Andrews actually grew up here in Trenton.
Yeah. I did. I was in the band when Mr. Westbrook, Stephen Westbrook, was the director. He was there for 2018, 2019, and 2020. And then I graduated in 2022. And then 2021 is when Coach Young and the mayor of Trenton, Tennessee, Tony Burris, came in. And Emma Lang.
Emma, where are you from, Emma?
I'm from Crockett County.
Okay. Where'd you go to high school?
In Crockett County.
Crockett County High School? Okay. All right. Very good. And that's close to Jackson, right?
Yeah, it's only about 25 minutes maybe from here, from Trenton.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Very good. So what's the history of your band program? This is not Peabody is used to success, right? This has been a good band program for a long time.
Oh, yeah. As much as I know about it, I think it was 95, 96, and 97. Am I correct on that? Whenever they won Division One 3 times in a row. Shout out Mayor, band director. Uh, and I think what's so poetic about it, getting it this year, getting the Governor's Cup this year, is under the last 3 that Peabody won. Peabody will be right under it in 2024. So.
And you said the mayor, Andrew. Clue us into who the mayor is.
Oh, the mayor's my grandfather, Tony Burris, the oh so great Tony Burris, the oh so honorable Tony Burris.
And how many years was he band director at Trenton Peabody?
Oh man, okay? So Damien just walked in. That's Damien. He was also
Damien.
on staff. I really don't know how long he was director. I think he retired. I want to say like 2006, 7. I'm not too sure.
Yeah. And from there to mayor.
And then retired, and then became a band director, and then retired, and became mayor again.
So, James, do you feel the pressure? Like, are you going to go for city council or something like this? Like, just to sort of work your way up a little bit?
I think I'm going to stay right here for right now.
Justice of the peace or something? Yeah. Okay, well, tell us about your show this year. It was called The Long Road Home. Is that right?
Yes. So it's kind of a play on Dorothy's perspective of the Wizard of Oz, and we kind of like followed her journey through Oz and kind of what she experienced. So you kind of meet the characters, and she kind of picks them up as we work through the show, and then goes through Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and then we meet the witch, and then the final movement is her actually going home.
Mm-hmm. And you use music from the Wizard of Oz, but you also used a little Dvorak too.
Yes. There's a lot of classical music intermixed inside of that.
Yeah. And you had a character riding a bicycle on the field.
Yeah, that was our Wicked Witch.
Yeah. And you had a tornado, and you had a yellow brick road. As I remember, towards the end, there was you made a drill set that was like a road, and you had your soloist was coming through. I mean, it was really evocative of all those Wizard of Oz images and themes. Whose idea was this? How long did it take you to come up with this?
Look. Nobody wants to hear me say this, and I've been saying it in the midst of 2020.
Hold up a second. Is he always like this?
Yes.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Andrew.
2022. In the midst of 2022, we had this show, and it shall not be named. However, I was in the middle of it. We were about ready to retire the season. I was like, we should do a Wizard of Oz show. And nobody wants to remember me saying that, but I said it. I was there. I know I said it.
You're claiming it right now.
Yes.
I do not remember you saying that, but we were on the way to, I think it was Laredo, for a playoff game. And James and I were riding in the car together, like 3.5-hour drive, trying to brainstorm shows. And I was like, we should look into doing an Oz show. So we literally spent like that long trying to like figure out what we wanted to do with that idea.
6 hours of show listening during that car ride.
Yeah, so that's good. That's how you do it, though.
We found a bunch that we liked. We decided on one a few weeks later. Then we decided that we weren't going to do an Oz show. Found a different show, and then ended up coming way back to the Oz show.
Yeah. I mean, it's a process, right? It's not a decision you're not going to make very often within like an hour's worth of work. It's going to take a long time to sweat through it all and argue and pick different shows. So who writes your music? Who does your drill, all the visual stuff? Who's putting all this together?
So Blueprint Pageantry wrote the show.
Mm-hmm.
David Keltz wrote our drill. And then we kind of show planned with a combination of us, our guard instructor, Jeremy Tate, and David Keltz.
Yeah.
I mean, Kelts was band director at Humboldt for a long, long time,
Yeah.
right? And Jeremy Tate's at Gibson. Was it Gibson County? Is it Gibson County? Is that right?
He's at Gibson County still, but he's kind of overseeing both North and South.
Yeah. And they were second,
Yes.
right? So that's a pretty powerful county over there for bands.
And
South Gibson was like third or fourth at Div 2, right? So that county is killing it. Good job, Gibson County.
Yeah.
Shout out.
So, I mean, I gotta say, we picked the music, but kind of the brains behind the story was our guard instructor, Ariel. She listened to the music and, I mean, almost like called back instantly with a game plan on how she wanted to lay it out. And, I mean, it sounded really good and we ran with it.
When did you finally know this is what you were going to do?
All state in April.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And how much do you have to curtail what you're doing to your kids to make sure that it fits your kids' skill set?
Oh, definitely a lot. I mean, you got to take that all into consideration, play off their strengths, try not maybe to show their weaknesses, but you always got to take into account that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. What was really strong for you this year?
Our guard, we felt our guard was really strong.
Yeah.
They kind of set the tone for it. And then, I mean, we had sprinkles of great players in every section. Like we really played off our alto sax soloist. Yeah.
Ain't nothing better than that tuba solo.
The tuba solo was good. You had flying monkey hats on the battery, I think, during that part. Yeah. That was a nice little touch too. Yeah. Enjoyed that. What was the hardest part of the year for you?
I'll say it. I will say it. We had performances stripped from us. It was out of our control, obviously, with the rain. But I think we wound up having, we had our first competition, which was the Pete Evans Showcase. That was taken away. A couple of our football game performances were taken away due to rain. And there was another contest that was taken away. So we had a couple of performances taken away from us that we could have definitely benefited from. But
well, you have to overcome stuff. Every group does. And, every good band that I had, there was always some sort of underlying struggle along the way. It was never just a skittle rivers and, daisies everywhere. It was always because we were overcoming something that sometimes made us even better. And talking to the folks from E-Town, I mean, they really went through it, right? Because that's up there in that Western North Carolina area. And they had kids that I don't think they had any kids lose houses, but they lost basements and personal belongings. And there were a lot of people that were really affected. They were out of school including their fall break for 2 straight weeks. And they were able to sort of stick in a couple of Band-Aids there in the middle of that, but they really were impacted and overcame all that and had a great year.
I was going to say something else that we were struggling with.
Yeah, you can do it.
Our biggest thing this year was dealing with people not being at rehearsals just because, they come to rehearsal, but then they have to leave. So dealing with, soccer players having to leave, just work, other extracurricular activities. So by, 4 o'clock every day, we don't have the whole band.
That's a tough thing. Look, I think band kids are always in demand across any school. But when your school has less than 500, everybody wants your kids, right? Yeah. Your kids are athletes, they're dancers, they're singers, they're academic kids. You're really having to share those students with other people in the school, I'm assuming. Is that right?
Yeah.
How do you go about that?
I mean, luckily the coaches work with us. We try to work with the coaches as best we can. Of course, we all practice at the same time, so it makes it tough. So, I mean, we just try to be smart with our rehearsal time and get what we need done with everybody there. And then we break into sections or we break into different stuff like that to utilize the players we have at the time.
That's really smart. That's really smart way to go about it. I mean, you can fight that battle, right? And some people, I think, try to fight that battle, but ultimately it's probably not going to be a win for you in the long run because you burn a lot of bridges in your community if you were kind of selfish with your kids, right?
Yeah.
help me understand how 2024 fits into the Peabody timeline. Like where you've been. You did the professor show last year, is that right? Right.
Yes.
Okay. And then where you're going next and where this all means for you.
I mean, it means a lot. Right now, it kind of feels surreal. Like Emma and I were talking about it today, and it almost feels like it hasn't happened. Because, I mean, today we immediately broke down into concert mode, and, we're playing Christmas music, getting ready for parades. So it just kind of seems like it's done with one thing, and then we're on to the next.
Yep.
So this is our 4th year working here. Our first year, I feel like we placed 3rd in state, and that was a really good year. We had some like fighting, hey, we're new directors type issues, but overall it seemed pretty okay. Our second year, we feel like that was our worst so far of the 4 years. Our show was called Chaos Order, and we joked that it was chaos. Last year, we definitely felt like we were like better coming up, moving up. But after this year, when we look back at it, it's like we're so much better than what we were. So hopefully, with the middle school growing, them coming up here, hopefully it just keeps going up and up.
Tell me what you learned from the chaos year.
We learned to better plan a show and not just throw random ideas, because there's got to be some continuity to it.
Talk about some of those random ideas. And I would say this because I had one of those shows too. Actually, maybe a couple of those. I taught for 29 years. I had a couple of those. But just talk me through a little bit of that, because I think this is a good conversation for folks to hear, especially young directors, because I think it's easy to get really excited about, oh, let's do this, and oh, let's do this, and let's do this, and we see shows like that every year where it's just it's a ton of ideas, but it doesn't really work together. So talk a little bit about what you learned from that chaos show year and how that made its way, what you learned into this year.
It's kind of hard to even remember it because I've blocked it, but but the whole idea, I believe, was like our drill was like pretty scattered, didn't have very much organization. We had boxes on the field. They were kind of scattered throughout. As the show went on, we brought in color into the show. Boxes came together. The forms started being very clear. And I feel like that's pretty much what it was. And so, like, if you were in the audience watching, you were probably like, what is the show about? What's happening?
We would even get questions like wanting, like, adjudicators to tell us the story of their show. And it was a very tough thing that year.
What is your show?
And when they asked that question, I would just look at James like,
I mean, it's easy to bite off more than you can chew, right? Sometimes those shows, again, saying this from experience, sometimes you ask too much of your audience. You expect them to know that this song or this color or this shape is going to suggest something that allows them to intellectually put all those things together, so they get the same realization that you had when you designed it. But you're putting a lot on them to know those kind of things. You know what I mean? And so it's dangerous to do that unless you have some sort of really strong, iconic, part of your show that's universal.
I think it's because we think about it so much that it seems like everybody should understand it. But I think it's just because we have thought about it so much, and then it doesn't come off that way, like on a first read or even a second read.
Yeah.
And it's kind of where you got to pull back.
And you can only really bank on a first read. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's the way you have to think about it. Even when you win the Governor's Cup, you still got to make finals, Yeah. What would you all say to young directors who are thinking about their show for next year? What is your advice? And particularly for schools that are like yours with less than 500 kids. What's your advice?
My advice as a young director is to not try and do it by yourself. Bring in people to help you and learn from them, because you don't know what you don't know. And since our second year, I've learned so much of what not to do and what to do.
And think about the strengths and weaknesses of your kids and what you can do to showcase them.
Fundamentals. Talk more about that, James. Tell me what your fundamental program is like.
So, I mean, just trying to have like a warm up packet, a warm up routine, not more so than just like stretch, but like a music warm up for winds, for percussion, for color guard, and then hitting your visual fundamentals every day. I mean, just the simple 8 and 8s across the field, forwards, backwards, slides are a big one, posture, satellites.
I can't think of really any days that we went without doing either of those.
That's the key, man. That's the key. I think people overlook it. I see some groups, the kids sound okay, but their feet are kind of a mess. And I know that if they spent more time on marching basics, they would sound a lot better too. It would just tighten everything up. The kids will be able to, especially the wind players, be able to move their instruments across the field with more strength so they can be in control of their sound quality. They're going to be more than likely more rhythmically accurate. I mean, everything works together. You can't just think, oh, we're going to play well and not march well. You have to march well enough that you can play well too.
Yeah, and to kind of circle back to that show 2 years ago, some of the problem that we ran into is we brought in 24 freshmen, and at that time, that was almost half the band. And I mean, they were a COVID class, so you could tell like the learning loss that they had, and we did not plan for that. We were just like, okay, the high school can do this, and we didn't consider that the freshmen coming in could not. We just assumed like, hey, we can catch them up, and it was tough.
And they're juniors now.
Yes.
They're your seniors next year. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else? More advice for young directors? Andrew, I'm sure you've got something to say.
Well,
you just seem like that guy.
So I'm not a music ed major. I'm actually a history ed major.
Oh, cool.
Part of what I've learned is like how you can, and it's more important for like people my age, but like as a young person, like how it builds your character, like how you interact with other directors. Like for instance, I would never like expect to have a one-on-one conversation about music with David Keltz, but here I am having a one-on-one conversation with David Keltz in like band camp, and it just make sure that you build those networks so that way that like you can have a reliable friendship, and it's just another person that you might know that could help you out one day.
Yeah. And folks like Keltz, those guys are always so willing to help. I think there's an impression sometimes that young directors have that folks like that are untouchable or they don't want to talk to you, but that's just the opposite. They want to help. They're so eager. I mean, Greg Bim at Marian Catholic is one of those guys. He was band director there, one of the best high school band directors in the country. Guarantee if you called him right now, he would have an hour conversation with you about whatever you wanted. Just folks that are willing to give of their time. And so young directors, and Emma, you said it too, ask for help, reach out and get the help you need, because none of us are good at everything, and we shouldn't expect ourselves to be good at everything. We've got to have a little help from our friends.
Yeah.
Well, Peabody team, congratulations. You guys, it was a great show. And I want folks across Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee to know who you are, and just, for you to be an example for all band size, for all bands in our state, not just the ones that come from small schools, but large schools can learn from what you guys are doing at Peabody. So congratulations. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have folks from the Betsy Band on with us. The Betsy Band is Elizabethton High School, and they are the Governor's Cup recipient for Division II this past Saturday at Stewart's Creek High School in Smyrna. It's Jonathan Valentine and Phil Ledford. So, guys, welcome to Bandstand.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be fun to talk about this. Let's just hear about your community and your school first. What is the nature of both those things? How big's the school? What's the town like?
Well, it's a small town, that's for sure. Phil has lived there a lot longer than I've been a part of this, which is why I hope that he would join us tonight, and I appreciate him doing so. But the school is less than 900 kids. and just in a little town in Carter County, way out east, that absolutely centers around the high school. The high school is kind of the main focus of everything in that town, and revolves around, the town revolves around the high school and the athletics and the band. So it's a really special community.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a one band town, is what it is, one school town. So everybody in our town, I think we have probably about 14,000 people here. One high school serves, everyone here. So the majority of, the people that live in this town, you either do two things here. You either play football or you're in the band. That's all you do here. And so, that's why we have such a really a large alumni base right now, because you can't go through this town. You can't walk into a store. You can't walk into a restaurant, anywhere downtown without seeing something about the Betsy Band hanging up, or a picture of a former student that was in the Betsy Band hanging up. So it's just kind of ingrained and sort of woven into this town.
Yep. So Jonathan, you're the band director. How long have you been there?
So I just finished my 4th marching band season, about to enter 4th concert season.
Mm-hmm. And you're from East Tennessee, is that right?
I am, yeah. I grew up in Bristol and went to Sullivan East High School.
Okay, very good. We're glad to have you back in the state, because I know you were in South Carolina a little bit before that. So we're glad to have you back in Tennessee. And Phil, you handle the visual aspects, right? So what is your role, and where are you from?
Well, I am from this area. I grew up in Johnson City, Tennessee. So I went to Science Hill High School, and grew up kind of like in the Milligan area, so right between Johnson City and Elizabethton. And I was a percussionist. Was in the drum line at Science Hill, and then at ETSU. Went on to pursue color guard, and did that with DCI and things like that, and winter guard, WGI. Kind of ventured off away from percussion into the visual color guard world, and so since Jonathan's been on board, I kind of went into sort of a retirement and then back out of a retirement again. So my main role with the Betsy Band isn't, I mean, I do work with the color guard, but I'm not the main color guard instructor, and that's not my main role. My main role is just pretty much all things visual, from helping coach and guide our color guard staff into just smart choreography and how to approach things from a visual standpoint, more so than a color guard standpoint. And so everything from that down to helping design the costuming, the props, the flags, the visual elements that you see with the winds of percussion on the field, and just all that. I jokingly say a lot of times, Jonathan makes our band sound amazing, and I try to make them look good. So that's kind of how we work.
Well, that seems to be a good pairing. I watched your video a few minutes ago I was telling Jonathan, I saw the video from BOA Johnson City Finals, and wow, it's just really impressive. I mean, sound-wise, it's visually, I mean, the colors are so vivid. So just tell us a little bit about your show this year, and maybe go in a little bit to how it got started, when you started considering it, how you put it all together. Like, give us the rundown on it.
You want to go first?
Yeah. So, we started the process back in January. We wanted to sort of do something original. We try to pitch around some ideas the first month or so, just crazy ideas. We do have one idea man who is also the guy who writes all of our music, AJ Pace, one of my buddies from college at South Carolina, who I also worked with for a year at Teal-Hanna High School in South Carolina. And yeah, he usually is the one that pitches all the ideas. He usually comes with like 6 or 7, which is great. But the biggest thing we wanted for this one was just to create something that we knew would be memorable, unique, not really a story, not really. We just wanted to create some sort of atmosphere on the field where we just knew that we would make some sort of impression. And from there, we took a few different paths to try to find something that the kids might connect with, that audiences might connect with, but that would also be relatively easy to portray. And once we kind of got down to some really vivid colors, our drill designer, who's Trey Harris, an alumni of the program, but also a really awesome band director at Bassett High School in Virginia, he was just like, why don't we just call it Euphoria and just have some really awesome colors and awesome fun music. And so that's really what it came down to. And so when we were picking music, we noticed that a lot of the pieces that we had in it had an element of human voice. We had the Michelle Buzz intro pre-show that was her singing on a vocoder. We had Wild Nights for John Adams, which was, of course, has that epic choir part that goes along with it. Bon Iver is a very, very popular vocalist in a pop type genre who also uses vocoders, and that's something that we did in the show with a baritone solo. The first time somebody suggested Paradiso by Robert W. Smith, and the first time I clicked play on that, I knew we had to do it. We had to use that because it was exactly what I envisioned whenever I thought about this type of show. And so we sang the choir part of Paradiso, and beautiful. We finished the show with his Paradiso as well. And then AJ wrote some kind of original stuff to get us between the singing and the big ending. And from my perspective, that was kind of how it all went down. I didn't have much to do with the designs of the colors. That's something Phil can kind of talk about. But as far as the music side goes, the overall concept, that was kind of what we settled on. I knew two things. I knew I wanted an element of the human voice throughout the whole show, and I wanted for our audience to feel something whenever they saw us.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan and I were kind of on the same, we were on the same page from day one. Rather than trying to tell a story, like he said, I think the most important thing for me was, I know that I've sat through, I can tell you how many shows I've sat through where I'll watch a great show. I'll watch a Broken Arrow or somebody like that. And sometimes, I'll leave a show going, well, I don't really understand what it was about, but musically it just hit me all in the feels, and then visually it was just magnificent. And why are we overthinking this? Why don't we try to tap into people's emotions? Let's tap into all those things. And for me, I worked before I came to Elizabethton, I worked for 11 years at Dobbins Bennett High School and worked very closely with Leif Cook. And by the way, I listened to his podcast that you did with him. It's
hilarious.
It was a good one. So if anybody listening to this one hasn't listened to that one, that was a good one to listen to. But one of the things that that I learned from him and learned from that staff over the years was, the majority, a lot of the people that sit in the audience may not be music people, but they're going to listen with their eyes. And, you present these things to them, and they may not understand what they're hearing, but they just know if they like it or not. They know if it has this sort of this way of just kind of moving them, and they don't really understand why. And so that was kind of the route that I thought we needed to go. Colors and textures play a huge role in that. And so I got to sit down with Andy Hudson, who worked with Band Today, and kind of started pitching some ideas at him, and sharing with him some images that I had found, and some textures and some colors and things that I wanted to kind of present. And then he would kind of come back with some different sketches or different ideas, and then we'd kind of brainstorm from there. And then and then I kind of pushed those out to Trey Harris, and then to Jonathan, and then Jonathan puts his final approval on things, and then then we're off to the races. So it was it just kind of it's really interesting how it started as one thing, and then it just kind of turned into something completely different than what we originally planned. So
but
and
you're able to
that's
do that because you're not trying to tell a story. There's not a specific narrative. So you
correct.
created a place, a space where you could let it evolve and not be tied to, oh, well, you have to make sure we show the cat right here or whatever, specifics
Right.
are in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's not a what are you trying to tell us? What story are you trying to tell us? What narrative? And we didn't have that. But going back to the singing thing, for example, when we were talking about this, I just remembered years ago I traveled to I was overseas and I was in Germany, and um, was walking through the streets of Frankfurt, I believe it was, and stumbled into a cathedral. And when we walked in, there was a choir and they were having rehearsal. And I remember sitting in the back of the church, and they're singing, in German and or whatever, and I don't know what they're saying. I don't know any. I just hear this sound and this voice and how it resonates in that cathedral, and it just gave me goosebumps. I remember I was very moved, and when we started talking about the human voice, that was one of those things that kind of triggered that memory for me. And I thought, we don't even have to sing words.
Yeah.
Just that voice, when it's presented properly, will just kind of also move the audience into that euphoric feeling. And so we were trying to find anything from musical textures to visual textures, anything that could invoke those feelings.
That's awesome. What are you most proud of this year?
I was really proud. I mean, I was proud of how resilient our kids were, and how hard they pushed, and how well they performed. I mean, we made so many incredible strides. Another reason why I wanted to sing in this show is because, annoyingly, for 3 years, I listened to them sing more in tune than they played.
Right.
I was like, wow, that's the opposite of every band that I've ever been a part of. Normally, we have to fix the singing and teach them through singing, but I would listen to them sing really amazingly, these chorales that I brought with me whenever I first started, and it's like, man, why don't y'all sound like that whenever you play? So I was like, it was a good year for us to try to show off the singing that the band can do. And so that was cool. And we've gotten more kids to join choir now, which I love. And
great.
As a small school, we share kids with everybody, as it's a small school, right? I mean, less than 900 kids go there. And, I got this is the first year that we've ever had our drum major at the week of state, because usually he's at the state cross country meet, and he usually just meets us there. This year, the TSSAA schedule was different. But I'm proud of our kids because, well, they're the best part of this job, and they're extremely hardworking and dedicated students who've been raised well. But we had a few moments earlier in the season where we had to talk about some of the off the field stuff, taking ownership of things like the microphones that were left on the field, the drum major podiums. Like we're about to leave. We're about to leave to go to a football game after a rehearsal, and all of the stuff is still sitting on the field, and it's supposed to be by the trucks. And I'm like stressed to the max. And, we talked about it after that all happened. And I mean, I'm genuinely, one of the most proud parts of the season was how well that they did that stuff towards the end. I mean, they took the ownership over everything. I mean, everything. And of course, they don't realize it, but that has a huge impact on their performance.
Absolutely.
And we try to tell them that, but they don't always let that sink in or even understand why that's important. But I mean, that was something that they got a lot better at this year, and I was really impressed by that. It made everything.
Yeah, sometimes they have to skin their knee a little bit,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
have those moments where you get to correct, provide some corrective feedback that can,
Right.
turn something that was a negative into a positive. Help
Yeah,
me
absolutely.
understand how fall 24 fits into your timeline. This is your 4th year. What's next?
Well, the band was, these were my first class of seniors. It was also the first class of kind of a massive class of seniors because we also, got a lot of guard kids because of the way that we sort of changed some of the things that were there before us. Year 4, I definitely wanted to be competitive at that Johnson City BOA, especially whenever a lot of really good bands showed up. And so we hit a lot of our goals. We won a class, which that one was kind of unexpected, but that was really cool. But yeah, as far as the grand scheme of things goes, we are considering what's next as we sort of change things from what they used to do, which was a spring trip. And now I'm thinking about doing some more like fall type trips, some more bigger stuff in the fall as a part of the marching season. I understand why people do spring trips. It's a great incentive to help kids stay focused throughout the course of the year. But for us, our kids just do everything. I mean, our kids are the most coveted kids in the building. And so once marching band ends, they all go do winter sports and spring sports, and they're presidents of student government and clubs and, their own activities outside of things. So it was just hard to sort of get them all back together to do a spring trip. So we're going to start probably doing an every other year rotation of going to Div 2 state, and maybe 1 year we'll go to a big regional somewhere else. Maybe we'll go to a super regional BOA. Maybe we'll go do a big parade, a big Thanksgiving parade, or a Christmas parade, or something that's fun, just to give them some more diverse experiences. And
That's
then, I mean, we are considering going to Grand Nationals in 2026. We're only about 40 kids away from being a 1A band at BOA. And so, I think it'd be
That
a
would
great
help.
trip regardless. But yeah, being in 1A would be a bit of a help for us,
Yeah.
as we do have significantly less resources than those bands that beat us at BOA Johnson City each year. So we do a lot with a little in Elizabethton, and the band has always been like that. And so yeah, that's kind of the plan moving forward where we are. But more important than that too is that I want to get the concert band out there too and try to do some cool stuff with them in the spring, make the symphonic band into a really big deal. This will be the first year that I will actually have a symphonic band class, as in the past they've all just been in one class all year long. And that made things really hard to develop the kids that needed more development, and then to push the kids that needed to be pushed for the other 8 months of the school year. So yeah, we want to do some more things like that, get the Betsy band back to TMEA, to doing some bigger, more prestigious events, and trying to get them to show the incredible talent and the incredible kids that we have in Elizabethton.
I love that. What would you both say to young directors that are beginning to plan for next year, design wise, for their marching bands, or college kids that are about to graduate? Like, what's the quick don't do list?
Oh
or
man.
do
Oh
this?
gosh. Well, I can tell you this, and I mean this. You could do a whole nother podcast episode on just this topic, or just from a visual standpoint and color guard standpoint. I've had several conversations about how we recruit, and building that program from what we had. One of the big things that from a color guard perspective that we had at Elizabethton was for many, many years, you had to play an instrument in the band before you could even try out for the color guard. Um, and so, and I understand why that was. I mean, because during concert season, what are you going to do with all these kids if they don't play an instrument? Um, but what we were finding out was we were pulling some of our best musicians to be in the color guard away from the winds. So during marching season, we would say, well, you have our best French horn. You have our first chair French horn player in the color guard. Why? Why is she in the color guard? Well, because she's a great dancer and she can do all these other things. And so one of the first things we started doing when Jonathan came on board was we opened color guard up. I work at the high school also as the instructional technology coordinator. So the year before Jonathan came, I was, just working there at the high school and looking around and meeting students, outside of band, and started realizing we have a lot of students in this school that would like to be a part of the band program, but they don't play an instrument, but yet they have a lot of respect for the band program. They, they see what we do. They want to be a part of this. So, how can we tap into this so that we don't have to pull away from the winds? And so we started bringing those people in. We started finding there's all kinds of dancers just in our school that are looking for something to do. Maybe they don't fit the mold for maybe trying out for cheerleading or things like that, but they need something.
Yep.
So we really started tapping into those kind of students, and that allowed our great players to stay on their instrument, keep doing what they do. But as far as a young band director or even a young visual designer coming into a program, I would say find a way to. I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this. Find a way to break the stereotypical mold of band nerd.
Yeah.
I hate to use that term, but I think that once kids start seeing, hey, this is kind of cool, this is starting to become something really neat, then they want to be a part of it.
Yep.
And I think that how you brand your program, how you present your program into the eyes of the other students at your school, is the biggest recruiting tool that you could have.
Yes.
Even for kids coming in from middle school.
Yep.
I mean, I have a teenage daughter myself. This is my 30th year working with color guards. And I know that it sounds kind of silly and superficial, and shallow, but when the young ladies want to try out for a color guard, one of the first things they ask themselves in the back of their mind is, well, what am I going to have to wear on a Friday night?
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to look like in front of my peers? So designing a show, designing a program that, that they can be proud of, that's not something
100%.
that's not going to look or seem humiliating.
Yep.
Is that you're going to draw a lot more students that way.
Yep.
More people are going to want to be a part of your program.
I
could talk all day about that.
Yeah, no doubt. That is another podcast. I used to tell kids all the time, don't perpetuate the myth of the band nerd. Nobody wants to hear you playing your second clarinet part to the fight song while you're walking down the hall.
Right. Exactly.
Don't do that,
I mean, one of the things we did Jonathan's first year was, and you see this trend a lot with color guards now, but we went with a Friday night look versus a Saturday look.
Yeah.
And we wanted that Friday night look to look more sporty, look more school spirited. And so we had new spirit tops and jazz pants and things like that. That looks a little more dance teamish,
Yeah.
for the color guard. And then year two, we started pulling them out of the stands, down on the field and doing some, different kind of pom-pom dance kind of stuff. And then that slowly evolved into, kind of what we have today, which is kind of a hybrid between color guard and dance team now, that we have on Friday night. And so, and then just the branding of band. I mean, things as simple as, like when Jonathan came first, one of the first things we did was, we updated the look and the logo of the band and branded it on apparel and everything you see. And it sort of, it gave some credibility to what we do and had a sporty look to it.
Yep.
So recruiting's is just huge.
You don't ignore Friday nights. You don't ignore the fan experience of Friday nights. We do tend to be so hyper focused on what the band needs, and that's important. It's not like it's not important, but that fan experience is a big deal because it is where the majority of the people will see you and make their assumptions and guesses about you, about your program. Unfortunately, that's the way that it is, and so you just can't skimp on a Friday night for sure. That's something we have made a big point of since I arrived.
Very smart. What would you say about planning marching band shows? I mean, you talked a lot tonight about you didn't want to tell a story. You went with more of creating an atmosphere. I see a lot of groups that try to tell stories, that try to ask a lot of the audience to understand certain things so they can kind of get it. Can you talk a little bit more about that real quick?
I don't necessarily think it's always a bad idea. It's always going to depend on the story. And everything is cyclical, as we know too. Everything that goes out of style eventually comes back into style. And so I do think that the marching band community is kind of coming out of storytelling mode and kind of more into that atmosphere building creative space and back into let's just pick music we love, which is kind of cool. But the pitfalls are always going to be many because you are going to have to do a much better job of leading the eye to different spots on the field that you want people to see. You're going to have to do a really good job of picking an idea that is transferable, with or without narration. I mean, narration is definitely something that bands have used in the past to help tell the story. But, that's something that can also become a slippery slope, because then, of course, you run into the issue of electronics not working and all the other craziness that comes along with that. But, I mean, the biggest thing is just knowing your community, knowing your kids, and just highlighting the things that you're good at. That's got to be something. I mean, because there's no doubt that one of the reasons why we've been so successful is because, I knew coming in that Chris Lockhart and Perry Elliott had trained those kids to play. I mean, they could play. And so, we needed to capitalize on that. And we needed to be able to show off the different things that they could do. And then, of course, Phil is so good at writing effective work, which is really the number one pitfall from a visual standpoint. Whenever you're trying to write stuff, the number one thing is it musical and effective? And then, of course, the old cliche that's so important is that excellence itself is the greatest effect that you could possibly come up with. So regardless if you're going to tell a story or you want to just create a space or create a vibe or an atmosphere, the number one thing you've got to remember to do is just make sure that the kids are doing whatever you ask them to at the highest level possible. So it's certainly not a bad thing to want to tell a story. We might do it again sometime soon, who knows? But it really just depends on your kids and your community and your design team and what are their strengths and weaknesses.
That's exactly
and
right.
That's all huge.
Yep.
Yeah, finding choreographers or designers, or people on your design team that, obviously you're always looking for someone with experience, but more so than that, looking for someone who understands what the main purpose and the main goal is. So for for me, like for color guard instructors, trying to find those people who can give up, well, I want to do this really cool choreography. I want to do this kind of thing because I've got some sort of thing I need to prove to the other people in the color guard world versus, what does this call for musically? What is this going to look like from the press box? And so there's a lot of people that they put too much into what I call the down low kind of look. There are too many intricate things with the hands and things that's going on with the written choreography that maybe doesn't read from a press box,
Yeah.
but to the person that's doing it, they feel like it's just going to be the greatest thing ever. And then you get up, in a press box and look at it and go, that doesn't even read from up here.
Yep.
So being able to kind of put that aside, like I said, I was a color guard choreographer for a long time, and it took a lot of years for me to realize that all the cool ideas and things that I thought was cool wasn't reading from the box. It wasn't contributing visually at all. Um, I had to, one day it hit me years ago that, hey, all I'm doing is trying to win a color guard trophy. And I'm not really contributing visually to what's happening here. And so once I kind of put that aside, and said, okay, now we're going to kind of approach this from a holistic thing, and how does this fit in with what the band is doing? That's visually, that for me, that's the big one, is thinking less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more.
Yep. Do less and do it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys overcame a lot this year. I mean, how much you lost a week of school? Is that right, for the flooding?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you had some kids that were impacted by that, and that's just such a tragic event that happened, and you had to overcome all that, and you go on to place really high at a BOA regional, a tough regional. You win Div 2 again. Congratulations, Jonathan and Phil, and all your team and all your kids. Just great job this year.
Well, thank you so much.
We appreciate that. Yeah, it was a bizarre year. I think some of the kids, of course, these kids are also kids that lost some experiences because of COVID still. And then all of a sudden, just like that, we go home on a Thursday night. We found out that our contest for Saturday was canceled, and we were just going home, just knowing there was a storm coming, not realizing the devastation that would follow. These little mountain dams that just had so much water that they couldn't handle it anymore, and ended up coming down into the east side of our town. Yeah, they were. It was scary, that's for sure. As I was getting real-time updates from one of our principals as we were trying to make plans, just sort of in the dark, understanding what was actually going on. We were trying to make plans, and we got to a certain point where I was just like, oh man, like, new plan. Let's make sure all of our kids are okay. Let's make sure that nobody
really
lost
important
their.
here.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that was tough. We got a week out of school, became an evacuation center, where I know some of our students stayed a couple of nights, and then fall break was right after that. We did get to sort of do an island of band in the middle of those 2 weeks, where we were allowed to rehearse Thursday. We rehearsed Friday. We went to a home game at Science Hill High School where we played against DB, and then we got to go to a contest that Saturday, and then we didn't see him again for another 4 or 5 days. But once we got back, the kids were all really grateful, and they definitely had a few of them that lost some personal belongings, some basements, little stuff like that. But we were definitely fortunate, not as unlucky as some other programs in our area.
Well, and you overcame all that and just did an incredible job. And I know that the year is not over. You got a lot more incredible things to come. And I hope everybody here understands what a great program is happening at Elizabethton, that the Betsy Band is one of the best bands in the state. And no matter what the class, no matter what the school size. And just huge congratulations to you guys. Great work.
Man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate you saying that for sure. And we, I thank Perry Elliott for setting me up for a ton of success. I did go back. I did listen to your podcast that he did, which was really fun.
It was also funny too.
Yeah. You've had some good ones, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
He's awesome though. I mean, golly, the way he set me up for success was tremendous. And so that was one of the biggest things that helped us get to where we are today. So shout out to Perry Elliott for his help.
Shout out to Perry Elliott.
He is a selfless individual in so many ways.
No doubt.
And he might actually listen to this podcast now, because he probably didn't know what a podcast was before he did this one, did he?
I don't think he did.
Yeah.
He's probably a podcast listener now. So
I
He's
did.
probably
shout
got
out to Perry.
a whole library of
did.
podcasts.
Yeah, man. Hey,
I
Perry.
loved his comment about being the one that didn't know how to use his phone, because his colleague, Deb Googe, the choir teacher that taught with him for all 30 of those years, would all the time come into me and just talk about how he's like, well, your predecessor didn't know how to do any of this. So let me just make sure that you got what you're doing.
I hope he listens to this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll send me a nasty text after he listens to it, so I'll know it's him.
That's fun. Well, thanks, guys.
Hey, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you so much.
So our third segment is with the Franklin team. This is Michael Holland and Nick Blue. They're the directors at Franklin High School, and they competed at the MTSU Contest of Champions on October the 26th, and they were the highest scoring Tennessee band at that contest. They won the contest, and they have the MTSU Contest of Champions Governor's Cup. Congratulations to the Franklin team. Michael and Nick, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, David. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Tell us about your community and your school and your band. I know a little bit about this through my history, so feel free to tell all the listeners about Franklin.
Well, Franklin has a long-standing history. Franklin Band has been around since I think it's 1947.
37.
37. David, you can check me on all of these facts. But it's been a staple of the community for as long as I've been able to find and hunt down in the history. In fact, our Franklin Noon Rotary Club started an annual fundraising event called the Franklin Rodeo. And the purpose of that event was to raise funds for our first uniform purchase. And so I think that just speaks to the value that the community has, the esteem that the program has in the community, the value they place on it. And there have been a number of directors at Franklin over the years, but Wayne Simpson, I think, is really a pillar in the community of Franklin. And in the history of Franklin High School, I think he really took the Franklin Band to new heights. We started going to various festivals and bowl games and parades. Under his leadership, we got to march in the Tournament of Roses parade and twice in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. The Franklin Band won the Tennessee Governor's Cup in 1980 and 81 under his leadership, and grew to an enormous size. And I tell anyone that visits the school, it's you could throw a rock and hit someone that's been a part of the Franklin Band or has a relative that's a part of the Franklin Band. And so it is woven into the fabric of the community and into the school.
I think also other past directors that went on to do university work would include, I forget his first name. I believe his last name was I think it was Finley. He went on to found the Mighty Sound of the Jacksonville State Band. I can't remember what the name of that band is, but the band down at Jacksonville State in Jacksonville, Alabama, he left Franklin and went to that school and started that college band. And then Wayne Pegram was director at Franklin High School, and he went to Tennessee Tech. And I think it was one of the Swore brothers that left from Franklin and went to LSU. So I could be wrong on some of this. Gina Cavender will catch all this stuff if we mess it up. But it's got a history. Right. It's got a history of those kinds of folks. And yeah, Wayne was the director. Now here I am taking over your podcast. Wayne was the director from January of 1968 until May of 2003.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a long stretch. So Michael, I'll expect you and Nick to be there that long too. So.
Well, man, Lord willing. I mean, Wayne is also he's such a staple in the community, in the band directing community in Williamson County. I don't know. You kind of taught me about the family tree process of band directors and who people studied under and with, and there are so many people that came from that family tree. or that were impacted by that family tree. And
Yep.
I mean, another note, I mean, you mentioned Gina Cavender, and it just reminds me too. I mean, the community, it feels so unique, and I'm sure everyone feels this way about their band programs, and not to try to make us feel more special than we are, but um, when staff members and designers come in and visit, they always speak about the unique quality of Franklin, and not just the students, but the way that the community feels, the way that they greet these guests and treat them, but also the volunteerism of our parents. We have been so fortunate and blessed with long-standing volunteers that have been a part of the program for not just the tenure of their students, but decades after.
Yeah.
And it is truly phenomenal, the level of support. And again, I think it speaks to the program, the quality of the program, but also the quality of the people that we get to serve in our community.
Yep. Now,
Absolutely.
Nick, let's get your quick perspective too, because this is your first year at Franklin High, but you were at Grassland for 3 or 4 years before then, and you're from Indiana. Right?
Yes.
You went to IU, I think. Is that right?
I did. I went to IU, graduated in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, and found my way down here. Started at Grassland Middle it would have been the fall of 2020. I know, David, you actually observed me teach a lesson outdoors, I think to 6th grade band, starting beginners outdoors during COVID. That was great.
There was a brisk wind blowing too, Nick.
It was yeah, it was quite brisk.
I was like, bless this kid's heart,
We were
man.
trying so hard.
Welcome to your teaching career. Here's the most difficult circumstances possible.
But yeah, it was, we got through it, and I've eventually found my way up here, and it's been a really, really special transition for me, just to continue to work with some of the kids that I taught how to play their instruments from the beginning, and most middle school band directors only get to see their kids for 2 or 3 years, depending. And there are now kids that I'm continuing to work closely with for their 4th or 5th or even 6th year of playing their instrument, which feels really, really special to get to see that progress, and really see those kids grow up too, just outside of band, see the young adults they become. It's really, really special thing for me. And I would definitely echo, Michael was talking about how when we bring in guest teachers or designers or whoever it may be, they always comment on just how great the kids are, and not how well they play, but how great their attitude is, and how they're just so hungry for information, and how they treat each other and how they treat the staff. And like you said, I am from Indiana. I was a newcomer. I'm starting to not be a newcomer anymore, which is kind of cool. But I was struck by that as well. The first time that I attended a rehearsal at Franklin, I guess it would be about 4 years ago at this point. Just how interested and invested the kids really are in what we're doing is a really special thing, and it's really cool to be a part of that.
Let's talk about your show this year. Your show is called Under the Hood. So take us through the idea behind this, what your concept is, the whole process.
Yeah, the show's called Under the Hood. We, over the past few years, we've done very storyline driven shows, and they have served us well. I think telling stories, I don't know, Dave, I mean, you talked about this all the time. I mean, this goes back to the Jimmy Gentry show. Everybody has a story to tell. And I think that storytelling is such a fun part about marching band. But there are times where the story that you have in your head doesn't always translate well. And I think that, we've had relative success with story shows in the past and in recent past, but we knew as a design team that we wanted to go, we knew in the beginning we were going to Grand Nationals, and we wanted to do a show that would hopefully set us apart and highlight our strengths. And we wanted to try to be a little more, I guess, elevated and not just stuck in the storytelling mode. And we wanted to give room for interpretation. And so we started throwing ideas out. And one of the, I think we start with what are our strengths? What do we do really well? And This senior class this year is incredible. They've also stood the test of time and change. They've weathered the storm with the program and through the pandemic. And this senior class, we have a very large number of guard members, and their talent level is, I think, phenomenal. I mean, I don't know a lot about guard, but they're really good, and that we knew was something that we wanted to highlight, and so we started from there. What's a character that we could really build around, and maybe not try to tell a story, but put them in an environment where we're not tethered to a story, but we're more tethered to their character. And someone threw out the idea of an auto body shop. And that was, I mean, you know how it works. Whenever you start throwing things on the wall to see what sticks, that was the one that everyone had the most things to talk about and the most creative energy around it. And it took off from there. So yeah, it's a auto body shop, day in the life. You kind of hear the garage door open, the radio turns on to Mustang Sally, and then things get a little more crazy whenever the cars start pulling in for service. And we kind of get into a crazy time with Fuel by Metallica. And that's where we feature our sections and kind of roll through some fast moving drill and fast playing. And then we get into our break time, and we break into Tracy Chapman's Fast Car, which features 4 of our amazing clarinet players. And then we transition back into work. We do the Beatles' Drive My Car. It's a little bit of a percussion interlude. And then we take off into Life is a Highway, overlapped with Closing Time at the end. And one of our members runs through this S curve and lands on one of the car props that we have, and the garage door closes. And so yeah, it's just a day in the life, and we try to highlight and feature the students in the best way that we can.
So how did you guys choose the music?
It was a collaborative process with the design team, and of course we started with what are some things that we can do, what are some pieces that may bridge the gap over multiple generations. Kevin LaBeouf is our wind arranger and one of the most creative guys I know. He's currently the brass caption head at the Bluecoats, and he just does a great job, I think, of overlapping pieces and bringing it to life in, I think, a fun and unique way. And he recommended a lot of works. I think it was Matt Jordan who threw out Drive My Car by the Beatles. And there were a few others that we had considered and that we even started arranging. And eventually those just kind of fell on the cutting room floor, and we landed on the ones that we have now.
Yeah. What's been the most challenging thing about this year? You're still going, right? So you still have Grand Nationals in 2 weeks or a week and a half. So what's been the toughest thing? Because everybody goes through tough stuff, like, have any of us ever had a marching season that was without some kind of challenge? No one has. Well, I mean, talking to the guys from Elizabethton, they had generational flooding to deal with for a week, and still won the Governor's Cup with Div 2. So what's been your challenges?
I think for me has been learning how to transition from what my role with the marching band program, what it was when I was still at Grassland, to what it is now. I was very involved for the past 3 years. I was a full-time staff member, just helping out wherever I could, wherever I was needed. But now being the assistant director, especially at the beginning, there would be times when there would be situations would arise and like a bell would go off in my head and I'd be like, oh, I have to take action. I'm the assistant director. Like, this is now my job, my responsibility. So that's been going really well, but finding my stride in that regard has been a challenge. Yeah. I would also say that going through the year, just as things become apparent as to what really is working with the show, that's really fun to discover those moments. but it is also maybe equally as challenging as you start to discover what maybe is not working. You know, for example, maybe the music doesn't quite match the visual elements that we're seeing, or vice versa, or these moments don't really connect, or, well, this isn't really doing what we thought it was going to do. And I think that those moments, first of all, identifying them and then really charting a course forward, for me has been a challenge. Michael, what would you say?
I think you answered very well. I think when your team is designing the show, I think that there are probably some inherent, I don't know if bias is the right word, but there are there are things that you just might be blind to, like just blind spots. That might be a better way to put it.
Sure.
Where you and the team believe that it works, or you might be voicing concerns and others are like, nah, this is going to be great. And as you really realize the product, as the students are playing it, as the drill comes in, and as you're teaching it, as the props are being added in, as the uniforms are added in, I think some of those challenges just start to become more apparent, where especially for people that have been in it for a while, I think you start to see like, this isn't doing what I wanted it to do, this isn't how I imagined it would be. I think the challenge is saying that out loud and saying it to your staff first, to make sure it's not just your stress and your crazy mind doubting everything. And then I think going to the design team, that's one thing I think we do pretty well. We stay in touch with the design team fairly regularly, particularly with videos of run-throughs and updates. And sharing those videos and getting feedback, I think, is really crucial before you get into the evaluative process. But I mean, really, for us, I think the biggest challenge was timeline. We had a movement, our fourth movement, Drive My Car, that was a percussion feature, and initially designing it, it was going to be something very different. And it was about twice the length it is now. And we worked really hard to get that on the field and ready to go in the middle of a hurricane. And tried to clean it as best we could before we went to BOA Chattanooga. And that was one of the biggest things, if really the main thing that they talked about on their tapes and their feedback and in the clinic following was, what is this movement? It feels very disjunct compared to the high quality design in the previous three movements. And that was kind of a gut punch initially, and then it was taking the blinders off, and we saw it for what it was. And our design team, I think, was instrumental in that. And we started making changes, and then really we spent almost a whole rehearsal day on that movement. And at the end of the rehearsal day, in the run through, all of us kind of looked at each other, scratching our heads like, this still isn't it.
It still doesn't.
And thankfully, again, we have I think a strong team that were able to come back together. I mean, this was the Monday before COC, and we had added the winds into it. We shortened it and cut it by 45 seconds. We edited the drill, we edited the guard work, and I think it's also a testament to the resiliency of the students. We told them when we designed the show that there would be parts that we were still, that would be production heavy, and that movement has been that one. And it's kind of turned into the time drain in some ways, but I think that the product is now is now fun and aligns with what we were hoping that moment would be from a pacing standpoint and a delivering standpoint.
If I can echo something that Michael said, being able to stand in front of your staff or in front of the kids and say, this isn't doing what we wanted it to do, this doesn't work, particularly after that second rewrite, right? That Monday before COC, when we stood in front of the kids during the band classes and said, hey, you guys are doing great work, but we need to change this again. that's not a great feeling. It's because you feel like you've let the kids down, or you've let yourself down, or the process down, or whatever it might be. And Michael said it's absolutely a testament to the resiliency of the kids and how invested the kids really are in what we're doing, and the level of trust they have with them, they have with us to do what is best for the show and for them and for the program, etc.
Well, we know that good leaders show vulnerability. I mean, that's been researched and that sort of thing. And so for you to stand up and say that to your kids the week before the Contest of Champions, I mean, that shows vulnerability for your kids. So in the scope of things, it's stressful, certainly, but there's also good lessons to be learned for you and your team, but also for your kids. I also think about the making of Jaws, the Steven Spielberg, the great movie. The shark didn't work for like 75% of the movie. It was supposed to be in the movie all along, and the shark wouldn't work. And so he had to completely change the way he filmed it. And instead of focusing on the shark displaying the terror, he focused on the human story. And so an accident became something that was great and created a tremendous sense of mystery in that movie. So in every kind of problem, there must be some sort of opportunity as well. So I know you guys will work hard at finding that and maximizing under the hood as you go into Grand Nats.
I mean, to piggyback on that a little bit, I mean, I think I believe that you're standing on the shoulders of those that came before you. And I mean, David, you have modeled that humility, I think, in many years when we worked together. But we've also walked that road. I mean, I think for, I don't know, band directors listening, I would not recommend doing a wholesale change in your show the week of COC or the last week of what might be your competitive season. But I think when you're going to Grand Nationals, understanding that, all right, we still have, after COC, about 2.5 weeks before we got to put this out for the last time. And, the pacing of the season feels different. We don't want to get all of it out there on the field too quickly, because then we haven't detailed it enough, and they've learned it with all of their relatively young skills.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think anyone that's done this for years knows, like, your opener is the dirtiest part of your show. And it's because that's what they learned when they first learned how to set drill. And the closer, they're tired when they're doing it, but that's some of the fastest drill you'll ever put on. And so I think, if you have a strong training program, then, you can build on that. And there have been years, my God, I mean, a week before we went to Grand Nats, we rewrote the end of the 2015 show. But now I see, and our fabricators joined in, and we made this flyover out of,
it stopped raining.
Massive, it stopped raining. My God. And so, I think you have to be wise in when you make choices like that. And if it's bad enough, and David, we always talked about triage. If that's the thing that's going to cause you to bleed out, then you have to have a team that can identify it and fix it. And you don't just want to try fixing it and it doesn't work. Like, you have to fix it. But if it's not something that's going to wreck the car, then invest your time in the cleaning and make your kids more confident going into whatever you're trying to do. That would be my recommendation. And I think that's a gut call, but it's also, for us, we knew going into Grand Nationals, that was a massive pothole in the show. That really, it would have blown up the show from that point on.
It's worth the time
we
investment.
had to fix it.
I mean, Jordan LaLama talked about this last spring when we did the designing for marching band. Sometimes you just have to say, is this going to be worth the investment to either stick with what we got or to take the time to change it? And it sounds like you guys have made that choice, which I think is a little bit great, because your show is called Under the Hood. So it's about tinkering, and it's about getting in there and getting dirty and trying to fix your carburetor. I don't even know what a carburetor is. I think it mixes gasoline and oxygen, but I know it is a car thing, or at least used to be. So you get in there and tinker with stuff and fix it and try to make it better and maximize its, efficiency. So you're doing that in real life, and you're doing a show about it. So that's kind of cool. How does 2024 fit into your timeline? What's come before 2024 in terms of the band's growth and development? Where are you going? What does this do for you moving forward?
Wow, that's such a great question.
Michael's rubbing his head again.
No, I mean,
Michael, don't play poker. Don't play
I
poker,
student
Mike.
taught it. I don't do that. But I student taught at Franklin in 2008. I was your second year, and I watched you build the culture of Franklin into what it is today. And I mean, we talked about the historic Franklin and the legacy that you inherited. But I mean, you took the controls and re-navigated the ship.
Well, we all did. That was a team effort.
Well, yeah, but you were the leader of the team, and we wouldn't have done it without you. So, I mean, seeing the band program go from its first BOA event in 2008 to what it became, I think is remarkable, and remarkable growth for the tenure that you had there. When I came back to Franklin 3 years ago, there were lots of conversations and discussions about the direction of the band program in that time. And one of the things was a commitment to going back to COC and having a local presence in the Tennessee area, but also to continue to maintain the national presence on the BOA stage while continuing to develop our the program as a whole. Our winter guard program is thriving. When I came in, we added another JV guard. Our percussion ensemble program is continuing to build and doing a great job. So, I think when we think about the program, we're not just thinking about the marching band, but the marching band was a big piece of it. And
your wind ensemble was playing at state conference this year. That's kind of a thing too.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean that's something that as part of the culture that you brought to the program was that we're not just a marching band. It is a whole program, and as we talk about where 2024 fits in, I mean, I think it was part of the goal to go back to Grand Nationals. But instead of it being an annual thing, I think it's more of a periodic thing based on the needs of the group and what other opportunities might come our way. I mean, last year we were fortunate to get to go to New York and play in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. And that was an incredible experience, but also a very different experience for our band students. Up until that point, it was Grand Nationals or bust. And I mean, you said this about some students. They don't get excited about it until they're there and they don't know why they should be excited until they experience it. Right. And they'll even speak negatively of it until they get there. And then it's like, this is the best thing ever. There's like a Modern Family episode like this, right? Where Cam goes into like, it's not Costco, but it's like Costco.
Yeah, with Mitchell. Yes, that's right.
And he hates it.
Mitchell's not a believer. Cam is the believer. Mitchell's not the believer. Yeah. There's also a Cobb salad episode about that too. I don't need to do a deep dive on Modern Family, but we totally could. And well, these seniors went to Grand Nationals as freshmen too. These seniors were the Lucy freshmen, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that is important for us because our parents and our students have at least been there and experienced it. They can pass on what they know to those that have been there already and share some of that, pass down part of that legacy of here's how we do this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a completely new experience for the entire band. Because I think, anytime that you go to a new contest, there's a little bit of the shock of being there wherever it is. And if you have people that have been there before, the confidence just getting off the bus is different.
Yeah.
And so, we're excited to go back. We're definitely excited to play at the state conference, and we're continuing to seek opportunities for, the next few years with different applications and things that we're doing that, we would like to maintain that strong presence nationally, but we also want to, get plugged into some other opportunities that are out there.
Cool. Nick, you can answer this one first. What would you say to young directors that are just getting started?
Ask for help. you have to ask
Preach.
for help. You find a mentor, someone who's good, and ask them to come into your classroom as often as they are willing to do, and learn from that experience. I was so lucky at Grassland Middle, really by chance, to get to work with Mike Scioto for 2 years. He came in really
out, Mike.
the way,
Yes.
yes, shout out Mike Scioto, great guy. Really the way that I understand it was he kind of heard through the grapevine. I don't know, David, if you were a part of those discussions, maybe you were, but saying, hey, there's a new guy over at Grassland Middle, please come help. And that's what happened. And he stood in the back of the classroom every day and made notes on what I was doing. I did most of the teaching, and he stood in the back with a notepad and would make notes. And during the passing period, he'd come up to me and he'd say, this was really great. You did this. This really worked. You did this. I've never seen anyone do that before, but that might be good. You might have something there. This was not good. Never do that. I have a vivid memory of him going, I don't know what you did. Never do that again. I'm like, okay, great. And, the middle school kids are running around the band room and they're like coming and going. And then 5 minutes later, the next class would start. I would get on the podium and he would take his spot in the back of the room with another page of notes. And we did that for about 1.5 years. Every day, every class, where he was able to mentor me. And so I think that's certainly been instrumental in helping me grow as a teacher. And I was certainly lucky that I had someone on hand like that at all times. So new teachers, no matter where you are or what kind of program you're in, find someone who knows how to do what you're doing or what you're trying to do, and get them into your room. Yeah. Have them watch you teach, talk to them about band, about music, about repertoire selection, about how to teach rhythm, anything, all the things. That would be it. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
That's great advice. Well, Franklin team, thanks for being on Bandstand. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
It's been really
Thanks for
fun
having us.
Fun to talk.
And good luck at Grand Nationals too. There won't be any pressure there at all.
No.
Thanks for listening to Bandstand. Bandstand's mission is to build a stronger, more unified band community in Tennessee by fostering meaningful conversations about the past, present, and future of school bands in our state. If you have topic suggestions or need to get in touch with us, email us at tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Your input is important to us, and if you have a topic you'd like to discuss about the past, present, or future of Tennessee bands, please let us know. Again, that email is tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Right now, we're broadcasting on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, so please subscribe, review, and rate Fox 5, please. And if you find something interesting or helpful, please share this podcast with your friends. Bandstand is proud to be sponsored by Music for All and Romeo Music. See you next week.